Hello, I'm Wendy Brockman. Welcome to Denver Decides. Denver Decides is a community partnership dedicated to transparent and accessible elections. This partnership includes Interneighborhood Cooperation, the League of Women Voters of Denver, Historic Denver, and is presented by Denver 8 TV. Today, we're presenting a forum on initiated ordinance number 302, known as the Let Denver Vote Ordinance. This will be on the ballot for the runoff election coming up on Tuesday, June 4th. A runoff election ballot rarely has an ordinance question on it, but through some unusual timing, this coming runoff election will have this one. Initiated ordinance number 302 is a citizen-initiated ordinance that basically asks this: shall the voters of the City and County of Denver enact a measure prohibiting the use of public monies, resources, or fiscal guarantees in connection with any future Olympic Games without the city first obtaining voter approval at a regularly scheduled municipal election or special election, should the city decide to use public monies, resources, or guarantees for this purpose? Now, we'll be using a modified debate format to present both sides of the ballot question, so let's meet our speakers. On my right is Owen Perkins. He's the campaign spokesperson for Yes on 302. And on my left is Mary Bryce, who will be speaking in opposition to Ordinance 302. Let's welcome our speakers to the forum. Owen, you will begin, and you will have 5 minutes to present your argument in favor of the Let Denver Vote Ordinance.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Interneighborhood Cooperation, the League of Women Voters of Denver, Historic Denver, and Denver 8 TV for hosting an important discussion about a ballot issue taking on matters of enormous consequence for Denver residents. I also want to thank Mary Bryce, who I've known for a long time and worked side by side with on many issues, for participating in this debate and taking what I'm afraid is the more challenging argument. The question on the ballot is essentially this: do we want the right to vote? Do we want the right to vote on a potential billion-dollar expenditure of our tax dollars being spent on the Olympics? A yes vote on Measure 302, the Let Denver Vote initiative, prohibits the use of taxpayer dollars on bidding for or hosting the Olympics without prior voter approval. A yes vote on 302 means, as a Denver resident, you will forevermore have the right to vote before the city spends any money towards the Olympics. A yes vote on 302 is a sensible vote on a sensible ballot measure designed to keep Denver's options open regarding hosting future Olympics and give the people of Denver a powerful voice in determining whether or not to invest municipal resources in pursuit of bringing the Olympics to Denver. The initiative would avoid closing any doors on a long-term basis, but instead empowers voters to weigh proposals concerning the Olympics on a case-by-case basis and determine if they want their tax dollars spent on pursuing the high-profile opportunity. A yes vote on 302 is supported by 4 dozen elected officials and candidates for Denver municipal office, in addition to organizations taking fiscal responsibility, transparency, accountability, social justice, and protection of our environment into account when endorsing a vote of the people. Both candidates for mayor have either endorsed or declared their support, and every current runoff race has at least one candidate endorsing a yes vote on Initiative 302. No candidate or public official has come out publicly against a yes on 302, and there's no organized opposition committee. We know those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, so this is an anti-doom initiative. Dennis Gallagher, our former auditor, city councilman, and a Democratic state representative and senator, put it in perspective recently, saying, "This is nothing new. You go back to 342 BC, and the Greek assembly decided they wanted to have the Olympics that year. Demosthenes, the great orator, said, don't have the Olympics. Don't spend your money on the Olympics this year. Philip of Macedon is massing his armies against us. We've got to put the money into defense of our country." Well, the assembly, of course, voted to have the Olympics, and that year Philip took 32 Greek cities. Now, the threat from Macedon seems not so pressing today, but we're constantly wrestling with building a budget to meet the city's most pressing needs, and we need to make sure our priorities are in order when Denver begins spending taxpayer dollars in the years to come. Bids typically come with a price tag ranging from $50 million to $150 million just to bid. A yes vote on 302 gives Denver residents the right to determine in the future if an Olympic Olympic bid is the best use of $100 million in taxpayer money. How big a dent could we put in the housing crisis with $100 million? How much could our schools benefit? How far could we get in protecting and expanding our parks, our transportation system? We spend $50 million a year trying to solve the challenges facing Denver residents who are living without homes. How much better could we do by tripling that budget? The price tag of actually hosting the Olympics starts at about $1 billion. Whether that's private or public money, the International Olympic Committee requires an additional fiscal guarantee for the city to cover any cost overruns. That's taxpayer dollars, and that's inevitable. Every Olympic Games since 1968 has had cost overruns. Are we willing to write a blank check to the IOC to bring the Olympics to Denver? Hugh Fowler, retired Republican state senator who celebrated his 93rd birthday this week, said this issue transcends politics. It's an issue of whether we're going to use up more of Colorado for somebody that doesn't even live in Colorado. We do not approve spending tax dollars with a yes vote on 302, and we do not reject spending tax dollars with a yes vote on 302. A yes vote on 302 gives Denver residents the right to vote and have the final say at any time in the future when we're faced with a future choice of how to prioritize our tax dollars. Vote yes on 302 to give Denver that choice, to give Denver a voice, and to let Denver vote on any future Olympic spending proposals.
Thank you, Owen. Mary, you will also have 5 minutes to present your argument against, but first you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to cross-examine Mr. Perkins on his opening argument.
Okay, great, thanks. First, Owen, I'd like to ask what prompted this measure? Where did you see the need for this?
Well, I think the city started an exploratory committee that culminated last year in looking into a bid for the 2030 Olympics. And we don't know exactly how much money was spent. Conservative estimates range from $500,000 to $2 million on that exploratory committee. And that's just the first step. And, we saw that the city was starting to move towards, was already spending money and not telling us how much money they were spending, and starting to move towards a process that would go into a bid if they were accepted. And all of that would happen, progressing to a bid and progressing to hosting the Olympics without any voter input. When we get into things that big of an issue, that big of a cost, when you're talking in the billions, hundreds of millions to bid, $1 billion perhaps to host, that seemed to be something that the voters should have a say on, and we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't proceed without the voters having that opportunity to make their voice heard.
Okay. Do you have any other cross-examination?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Mary, you have 5 minutes now to present your argument against the Let Denver Vote initiative.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, and thanks for coming. I want to also thank the League of Women Voters, Denver Decides, Historic Denver, the Inner Neighborhood Cooperation, and of course Channel 8. But mostly I want to thank, and also I want to thank my friend Owen for coming to speak, and also for his endless passion and leadership on issues that are important to both of us. And most of all, I want to thank all of you who are taking the time to come down here, or those of you who are at least watching and being engaged citizens. We need more like you. I, like Owen, don't think that Denver hosting the Olympics is such a great idea and in our best interest. And I, like Owen, believe that all of you should have a voice in that. Where we differ is that I don't believe that a ballot measure gives us our strongest voice. Owen and I do have a long history of standing on the same side of issues that are important to us and that deal with social justice, including Amendment 69, the amendment to provide universal health care last year. As you may know, Owen led a valiant effort. Unfortunately, he faced a statewide opposition of $4 million, which was a little hard to overcome. Later, I supported Proposition 112 last fall to limit fracking. And limit the distance of fracking, and that faced a statewide $33 million from oil and gas interest. And then just recently, I supported Amendment 300, which you may know is the right to survive. And that lost to $4 million raised just within the city. So these, what my point is that the ballot initiative favors special interests with money, and I don't think it favors grassroots movements. And you don't get the influence that money buys. We don't get the voter access, and we also don't have accountability. You don't know how your neighbors voted, whereas your city council people have to explain their vote. They also have to vote for the greater good. People tend to vote their own interests, and you don't ever have to hear how they voted. All the issues that I supported, the ones I just listed, I thought those were all sound policies. However, what came across in the election and during the campaign did not resemble what I thought they did. They were distorted, there were scare tactics, and we've seen what money does to initiatives over and over again. You may think that voters are against it now, but you don't know what's going to happen. Once these special interests come, they will spend a lot of money paying very smart people to make everybody think this is a great thing. So again, money buys access to voters. They can be in mailings, advertisers, canvases. Owen and I both know what it's like to go door to door, and we know that the voters don't always want to talk to us. They don't have to, whereas our elected officials they are required to talk to us, or at least that's public. They have to be accountable to their people. And anyway, I'm a strong believer in our representative system. It doesn't cost anything to reach out to your elected officials. They are required to listen, and you know how they voted and can hold them accountable. And that's all.
Okay. Just as Mary did before, Owen, you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to cross-examine her argument against the initiative.
Okay. So in believing in representative government, I believe in that also, but we have a representative democracy, and I believe in the democracy part. We do have it in our charter in Denver that there is a pathway for citizens to get initiatives on the ballot, and I believe we've done some great things through the initiative process. We passed, transformative campaign finance reform last year. We passed education initiatives, healthcare and mental health initiatives, climate change, dealing with climate change. I mentioned we have 4 dozen elected officials and candidates endorsing yes on 302, including endorsements from a former mayor, a declaration of support from the current mayor, the endorsement of multiple city council members, roughly 2/3 of the candidates for city council this year, 70% of the candidates in the runoff. If they all endorse giving the vote to the people of Denver and yielding their own power, why should voters oppose giving themselves the right to vote?
Okay. Do we?
Oh, okay.
Are we? If you may respond, yes,
Okay,
that is
thank
correct.
you. I believe that in representative democracy, I believe that we elect officials to do a job, and they are the ones who are in a place to study policy, to look at everything. Our voters, they can be engaged, but yet they have jobs, they have lives, they have all sorts of concerns. They're great for ideological direction, but that's where voters should take a voice. But it's not always the best policy to put that to the voters. I think things get distorted. I've seen the legislative process. I've seen the openness that people can come in and talk to their legislators. I've seen the tweaking, the negotiations that go on. And I do believe that most of them do a good job. We may not always agree with them, and many times I don't, but yet they do have to be accountable accountable to us and explain why their votes were the best vote for society as a whole.
Okay. Owen, the floor is now yours. You have 3 minutes for a rebuttal of Mary's arguments against the Let Denver Vote ordinance. This one is not a discussion or a time for questions. It's simply your time to counter her argument. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I think starting at the end there, looking again at the representative government, I feel like when we're looking at billion-dollar issues, and something that's hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, that may enter us into another category. We're only looking at the Olympics right now, but we do find voters really have an appetite for accountability among their elected officials. And one of the issues that we've got with investing that kind of money in the Olympics is that every elected official currently in place who'll vote on that will be out of office by the time the Olympics come to Denver, whereas the residents of Denver will still be here and still be footing the bill. We want to make sure that those who are in it for the long haul, who have that investment in it, the citizens of Denver, have that voice in deciding whether something with generational impact on our economy and our environment is going to take place in Denver and in Colorado. I want to clarify, perhaps, in my mind, when you talk about ballot measures favoring special interests, I think that not necessarily it favors them to promote, to introduce ballot measures, but they tend to be on the winning side in those arguments because they have so much more money and they can defeat an initiative like we proposed. This has been a great grassroots campaign. We have used relatively small budget, I think, under $30,000, which is pretty small for a ballot measure. I think some of the ones in the fall were in the millions of dollars on the Denver ballot. But we are counting on getting out door to door, getting organizational support, getting grassroots support. And I think on the idea, when we talk about voters voting their own interests, that's exactly what we want. I think we want voters to have that opportunity to make sure that their interests are held as the priority. I feel like so much of what we deal with these days in Denver and in Colorado and nationwide is a battle between the public interests and the special interests. And this is an effort to turn down the profit-making, to have the opportunity, to have the choice to turn down or accept the profit-making opportunity of the Olympics, and to prioritize the interests of the people and to have them vote in their interests and to support the outcome they believe in. The times change and the environment changes. That's why we want this to go on in perpetuity and let people decide on a case-by-case basis, given the environment of that time, whether they think the Olympics are right for Denver.
Thank you, Owen. Mary, you have 3 minutes for a rebuttal of Owen's arguments. Again, not a discussion or questions. It's simply your time to counter.
Oh, okay. First of all, I want to go back to the I do want to point out that I don't see there's any reason to believe that the next generation of elected officials are going to be any less accountable or responsive to the people who are in office now. In fact, some of these citizens who are voting on this will be in office, and they will be very interested in what happens. Also, I want to point out that in your opening statement, you very eloquently described the impacts of what the Olympics would do. And some of them you listed were social justice and environment. Those are all common issues, and those are the greater good. And those are things that I think an elected official would be in place to consider, whereas your average voter, and I mean average voter, I don't mean you people who are out there, you people who are watching. Again, I wish you were representative of all voters, but I don't think you are. But many of your average voters aren't going to take those things into consideration. They're going to look at what's on TV, what flashes in front of them, what they're promised, and like I said, vote their own interests.
Okay. We've come to the end of our time for discussion and debate. Now each speaker will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we're going to begin with Owen Perkins, who's speaking in favor of initiated ordinance number 302, the Let Denver Vote initiative.
Well, this is a vote about letting Denver residents stand up for the evolving values and priorities of our community. We're in the midst of an election season that's seen scores of candidates talk about their values and priorities for the city of Denver, but we haven't heard anyone push investing money in the Olympics as a priority. And yet, last year, an exploratory committee spent a great deal of time and money looking into a potential bid for the Olympics. If the people of Denver think bidding on the Olympics is a priority, voting yes on 302 means they can say so in a future vote. If they think other priorities should come first, voting yes on 302 means they can say no to spending tax dollars in a future vote. The question on the ballot gives us that right to vote on any future proposal. A yes vote on 302 gives Denver residents the right to consider these issues carefully, to consider a thorough, transparent, and necessarily convincing plan. Our vote is our voice. Vote yes on 302 to give us our voice and let Denver vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And now a closing statement from Mary Bryce, who's here speaking against ordinance number 302. You also have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. And I agree, like Owen, I want you all to use your voice, to become involved, to organize. If this should ever come again, I want you to make a movement, hire Owen as your leader, and go down and talk to your elected officials and get involved in the process and let your voice be heard that way. Thanks.
Okay. That wraps our very friendly forum for initiated ordinance number 302, the Let Denver Vote ordinance. It'll be on the June 4th runoff ballot, so don't forget to vote for June 4th. I'd like to thank our speakers, Owen Perkins and Mary Bryce. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, guys. Also to the Denver Decides partners, which include Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, the League of Women Voters of Denver, and Historic Denver. Denver Decides is presented by Denver 8 TV. Also, we want to extend our thanks to the staff and management of the Denver Art Museum and Christy Bassiner, the Director of Communications and Public Affairs, for providing this great location for us for all of our runoff forums. We hope we've given you a fair look at both sides of initiated ordinance number 302. Be sure you voted and returned your ballot by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, June 4th. For complete election information, you can go to denverdecides.org. I'm Wendy Brockman. Thanks for joining us.